In the Slammer. 35 years inside with Noel Razor Smith.
Hello and welcome back to the In the Slammer podcast, 35 years inside with Noel Razor Smith. My name's Elliott Frisby, and here we talk about the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So, Noel, your, I suppose, best way to say it, main crime was armed robbery, more specific, armed bank robbery.
Yeah.
So I'd like to sort of talk about that today, if that's right with you.
Yeah, it's fine.
So I suppose the best place to start is first experience, and also why armed robbery?
Well, another thing I kind of fell into by accident, really. What happened was, I was telling you previously about I left home at the age of 14 and I was living in a car. And what happened was, one morning during this period, I got up very early, about 5 o'clock in the morning, and I went to buy something, I can't remember what it was, in a local sweet shop in Byland. And I walked in, there was nobody else in the sweet shop. There was one guy behind the counter. And I gave him, when I was paying for whatever it was I was buying, I think I gave him an Irish 10p or something like that I'd been giving him my change. Anyway, we started arguing about it. And this was my first time really arguing with an adult. And in the end, it got so heated that I had a spanner in my back pocket for the motorbikes, I think it was. And I pulled this big spanner out and went, go on, I'll knock you with this. And he ran into the back of the shop and slammed the door. So now the till's there, open. And I'm thinking, well, is he coming back or what? And he's shouting, I'm going to phone the police. So I've gone behind the counter, opened the till, and took about 30 quid out and took some fags and left. So that was really my first ever armed robbery with a spanner. But this got me thinking, and I'm thinking, wow, that was easy. All you got to do is pull out a weapon. And, you know, and I've seen a lot of heist films and James Cagney films and stuff like that. So... I'm going to jump in here, just in case someone hasn't heard the previous podcast. This is post when you got picked up from the unmarked van. Yeah. As that, because you were saying about you're on the motorbikes at this point, which all came about. When I first became a criminal, really at the age of 14, through being taken in by the police.
Because if you haven't heard this already, it all stemmed from an incident that happened before. So do go back to the earlier podcast and listen to this. But sorry to interrupt. So you've just taken the cash, you've taken some fags off the counter, used a spanner, and you realised how easy it was.
Yeah, it got me thinking. And at the time, I had a couple of mates who were quite criminally minded. One of them was a gypsy fella, and he was a good driver, he used to steal cars. And the other guy was my mate, he's dead now, Peter. And Peter was a year older than me, but he was an ambitious criminal, if you like. He was the only real criminal I knew. We lived on the same estate. And we got together, and I was telling them how I'd stolen these fags and this money. And I can't remember who it came to, but one of us went, well, why don't we do a proper armed robbery? So, you know, what can we do? So we started plotting, and there was a record shop in Streatham, a little record shop that we've been in a couple of times. And we decided on that as our target. So, of course, having seen all the films and that, but not being, you know, knowing the practicalities of armed robbery, we prepared for everything. We had a bag with wire cutters to cut the phone, stocking masks, rope to tie the people up in the shop. We had absolutely everything. We had a fake gun, and Peter had a knife. We stole a car, a little Mark I Cortina, and eventually went through this robbery. But we were so scared that we started out to do it at 10 o'clock in the morning, but we spent all day putting it off, prevaricating and going, well, let's go and have a cup of tea and then we'll come back. And then because we're terrified at what we're doing. So in the end, we've decided we've mustered up our courage and went, right, let's do it. So we had George, who was the gypsy guy, was outside in the car. Now, it's the middle of summer, and George has got an overcoat and a stocking mask over his face, sitting at the wheel with the engine revving. This is how amateur we were. Me and Peter have got big overcoats on, hats, woolly hats. We got the bag with all the gear in it. We've gone into the record shop, and when we went in there was one old hippie guy behind the counter, and there was another customer in there. So Peter went, pretend we're looking through the LPs. Wait till he goes. So we pretended to look through the LPs. In the meantime, George is sitting outside revving the engine, attracting attention like you wouldn't believe. And eventually this guy's gone up to the fellow at the counter, bought his LP, looked back at us, laughed and walked out. We must have looked really suspicious. So I'll never forget this. There was an LP out at the time that had been heavily advertised on the television, and it was called 20 Heartbreakers, and it had Roy Orbison, Only the Lonely on it, which was quite a favourite of mine. So we pulled this LP out the rack, and we knew from our recce on this record shop that the record player was underneath the counter, so we'd have to go down to put the record on and then come back up again. But in the meantime, we're there. So I've gave him the LP. He said, what track? I said, track 6. He's gone down. As he's gone down, I've gone to pull this gun out, and what happened was it got caught, the sight of the gun got caught on the inside of the overcoat, on the lining. So I'm trying to pull this gun out, and this guy's putting it around Peter's gun, like that, hurry up, as if to say, hurry up. He pulled his stocking mask down, I haven't even pulled mine down. And the guy's popped up just as the gun come out. But when it's come out, it pulled a swathe of the lining, which was red, out with it. So that's hanging off the end of the gun, like a bang thing, which I didn't realise at the time. And the first thing that came into my head when I pointed the gun at him was, stand and deliver.
And that's what you said?
Yeah, I was a Dick Turpin fan. Stand and deliver, probably in a squeakier voice than that. And he kind of giggled, he laughed. And he looked at us, and he reached over to take the bit of thing off the end of the gun, and I went, get back or I'll shoot you. You know, now I'm into Dirk Bogarde mode, or David Attenborough in Brighton Rock. So, so this guy's like, eventually he gets terrified when he sees we're serious. Peter's pulled out the knife, and we said, give us all the money out the till. No, give us all the money out the safe. He said, I haven't got a safe. So we went, well, give us the money out the till. So he's opened the till drawer, he's still got one hand up. He takes a £10 note out and puts it on the counter. So I said, where's the rest of the money? He said, we took it to the bank at 3:00. It's now about 3:45. So I've gone, right, so I've grabbed the tenner, and now, instead of just making a getaway, because I'd seen so many films and it's like this in films, I went to him, see that roof across the road? So he went, yeah. So I said, there's a sniper up there with a rifle. If you leave this shop in the next 10 minutes, I'll phone the police, he's going to shoot you. We had things to cut the phone line, never even pulled them out, pliers. Never tied him up. Stay where you are for 10 minutes. We legged out to the car, and as we were going out through the door, there was a rack by the door with a load of LPs on. And because I knew I'd only got a tenner, I grabbed an armful of LPs, which were all the same LP, the Bay City Rollers' Greatest Hits. Right. Jumped into the car and off we went. Now, the excitement was fantastic. When we got to our hideout, wow, we're still buzzing, talking about what happened and everything. Then we look at the money. And the other two guys go, £3.30 each. That's a bit... This was 1976, so it's still a bit of money. You can buy 3 pints with it. But, they went, well, I don't know about this. But Peter went, I'd do it again. But me, I was so excited at having done it, it just struck me, I want to do this all the time.
Why were you excited?
Because I'll tell you why it was, and I found this out years later. When I was a kid, I was a pretty insignificant kid. I was a little skinny kid. You know, I used to have a lot of fights, but I wasn't a very good fighter, and I used to get bullied. And I'd never, ever been in control. I'd moved from school to school. I'd done everything people had told me. Then I'd been beaten up by the police when I was first arrested, and that changed me. And now I realised for the first time that I could be in control. I was in control of this situation. You know, it was me running this. For the first time, I had responsibility for something I was doing. And I really enjoyed that. I wanted to be, 10 foot tall, waving a gun about and everyone looking at me, because I'd been just in the shadows up until then.
So is there, if you don't mind me saying, Noel, is a little bit of attention seeking in there?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So if there's a bit of attention seeking there, and I'm guessing that's for a lot of people, am I right?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
So is there a little part of the buzz maybe wanting to get caught?
There is that. I mean...
I know there's the whole, we didn't get caught, but is there a little part that says, I want to get caught?
Eventually that comes. When you've done a few robberies, you kind of realise that you're pushing your luck all the time. Every time you commit a robbery, you're pushing your luck. But what you do is, because a lot of robbers have got this kind of gambler's mentality, they gamble that it's never going to be the next time. The next time's going to be all right. And this is why I say longer sentences or the death penalty are not a deterrent to people committing crimes, simply because when a criminal goes out to commit a crime, he never thinks he's going to get caught. It's never in a million years do you think you're going to get caught, or you wouldn't go out and do it. And an example of why the death penalty is no deterrent is, in the 18th century, they used to hang pickpockets in London outside on Tyburn Tree, 12 at a time, public executions of pickpockets. And they were big days. People would come from miles around, picnics and whatever, to see these pickpockets hang. And in the crowd would be pickpockets working the crowd while their mates are getting hanged. So it's no deterrent. They don't say, oh, that could be me next. They think, I'll never get caught. And a lot of criminals are like that. A lot of criminals think, every time I go out, I'm not going to get caught.
Yeah.
So there is that. But there's also the fact in the back of your mind that you know you can't get away with it forever. You know that. On some level, you think to yourself, sooner or later, I'm going to get caught at this, but not the next time.
Right, gotcha.
And that's the mentality.
So, okay, so you've gone from spanner to fake gun with a long bit of red thread hanging from that.
Yeah.
You got the I mean, I was just saying the reason why I'm pausing here is because you said about rope.
Yeah.
Now, if you're gonna go in with the intent of tying someone up, that could hurt them.
Yeah.
Where is the line? What is armed robbery?
Actually,
if I had my fingers in my coat and I wanted you to be scared, pretending I've got a gun, is that armed robbery?
I've done that before and been charged with armed robbery. What people have got to understand is the actual act of armed robbery does not require a weapon. What it actually requires, the law, is for you to put someone in fear of their life, right? No matter how you do it, it can be this is why people get done with fake guns and they still get done for armed robbery. It's because you have to believe that I would shoot you or kill you or stab you, and that's why you give the money over. So I've got to put you in fear. And how I do that is by use of a weapon, real or otherwise, but you don't know whether the weapon's real or whether it's loaded or anything. So that's enough, is to put someone in fear of actually being harmed and then handing stuff over. That's the definition.
We're in a nice garden right now. If I got a branch and I went into a shop and I got them fearful that I'm going to hurt them with this branch, which I've just picked up, is that armed robbery?
It's armed robbery.
Right.
You'd get about 9 years for that. Right. And I base this on the fact that during the 80s and 90s, there was a lot of amateur armed robbers that hit the papers a lot of times. I was in jail with loads of them. One of them was a guy they called Banana Man, who used to rob banks with a banana in a bag and then eat the evidence afterwards. The other one was a guy called the Cucumber Kid. He'd have a cucumber in a bag. They still got double-figure sentences because it wasn't about what they were robbing with. It was the fact that the people they were robbing thought they were in danger.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep a straight face.
Yeah.
The Banana Kid eating the evidence after.
He was quite a funny geezer. I spent a lot of time in jail with him and the Cucumber Kid, Ernie Coverley. Yeah.
Okay, so you've gone through that. So where did your armed robbery then take you?
Right. What actually happened was I got arrested for stealing a motorbike. So we had other armed robberies planned, but we never got round to them. Like other things took over, like actual living. And every day was chaos for me. I was on the run. I wasn't living at home. The police were hunting me everywhere and pulling my mates up regular and asking where I was. So it was a dangerous time for me. So I got nicked on a motorbike and I got my first real taste of incarceration. And that was the short, sharp shock. This is where I made my contacts to continue in the armed robbery game, because I know it sounds a cliche and a lot of people say it, but it is actually true. Our prisons are universities of further criminal learning for criminals. You can go into prison as a fraudster and learn how to commit armed robbery, learn how to steal cars. Everyone talks in prison. That's what they do, and they're all criminals. So if you want to know about, say, making dud checks or forging someone, you go and see the forger over on B-Wing and say, how'd you go about doing this, mate? So you learn as you go along. And what happened was, my first taste of incarceration, I actually met a guy from North London whose brother was an armed robber. And we used to talk about armed robbery all the time because it was a glamorous crime to us. We were kids.
Okay, so you saw that if you're watching on YouTube that we just done an edit there. That's because the conversation was going down the line where perhaps we shouldn't really broadcast that. So we just pressed the reset button there, and we're going to carry on. So you were talking about we're talking about armed robbery.
Yeah.
Which was the area which you're mainly known for. You've done how many armed robberies have you done? Would you say?
I wouldn't know. Certainly in the hundreds.
Goodness me! Wow.
Yeah.
But you were saying about when you're inside, it's almost like a university on how to be a better armed robber.
Well, it's the same with most crime in prison. I mean, I know it sounds a cliche and a lot of people say it, but that's because it's true. Our prisons are universities of higher criminal learning. You can go in for stealing a push bike and be put in a cell with an accomplished burglar who, during the hours of boredom, will teach you or tell you how to burgle houses or shops. You can go in as someone who's a shoplifter and learn how to commit armed robberies. I think the worst part of prison, the worst part of that is you can go in completely straight, and a lot of people become drug addicts in prison for the first time as well. So it's, it works both ways.
So it's almost like in different, what do you say, like wings or wall?
No, you're all kind of lumped in together, really, unless you're a top security prisoner.
But you could like pop say to this cell down there, that cell down there, that's like fraud, that cell down there,
Yeah.
and you could just go and learn
Yeah, I've done it. There's people like, even amongst the armed robbery fraternity, for want of a better word, my favourite bank to rob in the old days is gone now, but it used to be the Midland Bank, the listening bank. But if I wanted to know about robbing Barclays banks, there's going to be another armed robber with a pile of depositions who's spent his life robbing Barclays banks, and I'll go and get the information from him.
All right, so a bank, right, it's not a case of, right, we're going to rob banks now. Each bank's differently.
Yes.
You've got to treat it completely different.
You have indeed. There's a certain bank, I mean, I don't know if I can mention the name of it.
Okay, yeah, best not yet.
Which I won't, but the reason nobody robs them is because their actual policy is that if somebody comes in with a weapon and threatens the cashiers and customers, the cashiers are to duck down behind the counter. They can't be touched. They're behind bulletproof glass, and leave the customers to fend for themselves, even if they're threatened. And I mean, there's no, for an armed robber, it works because there's no vowing going into one of them banks. No matter how many customers you threaten to shoot or what you threaten to do, they're not giving you any money. So different banks have different security routines, which is why some people, what they do is if they rob a bank and it's successful, they will stick to that banking branch because they know how it works in this bank. And it changes all the time. I mean, let's not be wrong about this. Bank security changes all the time, but to keep up with the security, it's kind of an evolution of crime, if you like. And the example I would give you is this. When people first started robbing security guards, the security guards didn't have a crash helmet. They didn't have a visor. They didn't have nothing, so they got coshed on the head. So then security guards thought, stop us getting coshed on the head, let's wear a crash helmet. So they did. So they stopped getting coshed on the head. But what robbers started to do was squirt ammonia in their faces in order to get the money. So they couldn't cosh them on the head, so they evolved and squirted ammonia. Then they decided to have visors. And what did the armed robbers do? They decided the best way was to bring a can of spray paint and black out their visors so they couldn't see nothing, and then attack them bodily and take the bag or the box. So it evolves all the time. It's like banks. At one stage, I think in the 80s, a lot of banks installed, or one series of banks installed, these shooting screens. So if you went in to rob, a steel screen shot up and closed off the cashier's places so you couldn't get the money. Unfortunately, one of the first robberies on them was a young guy. He went in, leant over the counter, they pressed the button, it threw him up to the ceiling, nearly broke his neck. He had a fake gun, so they went with do away with them, so they had to get rid of them. But there's loads of stuff like some banks that are the Midland banks that I used to do, their security improved like this towards the end of me robbing them. In the first instance, you could walk into the bank and rob it. What they started doing was putting an airlock between the street and the bank. So this door would automatically open, you'd go in, and that door wouldn't open until this door closed. Now, if they see you coming from behind the counter or had any suspicion, they could flick a switch and you're trapped in the airlock. So how we got around this, we used to carry a holdall with a breeze block in it.
Yeah.
So once that door shuts, plonk that in front of the other one, or plonk it in front of that one so it can't shut, and you've always got an out.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. But, the more innovations they come up with, criminals will counter them because they've got all the time in the world to think about how they're going to, get around security issues. So whatever you think of, a criminal is going to think of a way around it. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. It makes sense. It's like it's almost like they're seeing it as their full-time job. And with like every job, it's got to evolve.
Well, that's why criminals call robberies work. That's what you say. You never phone up somebody and say, do you fancy coming on a robbery? You say, do you fancy a bit of work tomorrow? Because that was our job. As a full-time criminal, that is your job. And when you cut it down to the simplicities like that, because you get into it and you go on, once you're in it, you're in it, and you have to abide by the rules of it. And the rules are that that's your job. That's what you do 24/7. That's how you earn your living. So it's within your interest to keep up on any innovation they come up with and beat it. And it's easier to beat security than it is to create security.
But there must be so many things that can go wrong. I mean, what's this about a shotgun going off in a car?
That was, I'm still deaf from that. That was one of my early
Well,
forays.
now you still...
Yeah, oh, yeah, in one ear. And what happened was, it was quite a funny story. We'd managed to get, me and Peter and George had managed to get hold of a real shotgun. Originally, we had the 16 gauge, but we had no ammunition for it and didn't know where to get ammunition. So a friend of George's had done a burglary out in the country and stolen a 12-bore shotgun. He'd sawn it down, used it for a while, and then wanted to get rid of it because it was hot, and who better to sell it to than a bunch of kids who were out, like, committing armed robberies. So we bought this gun, and I was in charge of the gun, and it was loaded. It was a 12-bore double barrel. It was about 18 inches long. And we'd done our first robbery on a rent office with it. And the plan was to burst into the rent office. I would have the shotgun, fire a shot into the ceiling to get their attention. This is the first time we'd ever have been firing a shot on a job. Fire a shot into the ceiling and rob the gaff. Still having another barrel in case anybody tried anything. So we ran into the rent office, pointed the shotgun at the ceiling, pulled the trigger, nothing. We still done the robbery, got away with the robbery. And what happened was, we're in a car down in Byland after the robbery, a couple of hours later. We had the shotgun in the bag. I was in the back seat with the shotgun. My two mates were in the front. We went in the chip shop, got some chips, sat in the car with the windows rolled up, eating our chips. While we're doing that, we're talking about the robbery and what went wrong. So I said, this shotgun don't work. So they're going, well, what's wrong with it? I said, I don't know. And I've got it out the bag, and I'm holding it like that with the barrel pointing upwards, and I've got my finger on the trigger, and I'm going, look, it doesn't fire, it doesn't fire. I don't know what's wrong with it. And George, who's in the front, who knew a bit about guns, has leaned over and went, that's because you still got the safety catch on.
Oh, no.
Flicked up the safety catch, and I fired it in this enclosed space. It blew a hole through the roof, but made us all deaf. George's ears were bleeding. We staggered out this car with all bits of highlighting from the roof all floating about like a snowstorm. And I couldn't hear anything for about 5 minutes, and we're staggering around the car. Now, this was the 1970s, and the people, I found out afterwards that the people who came running when they heard this thought it was a car bomb, an IRA car bomb that had gone off. That's how loud it was on that little street. But we managed to get away and left the car there. Sorry, I'm really sorry.
No.
I've got to answer it.
It's live.
Hello, mate.
You all right? How you doing? What's happening?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. It's because I rang you about something to do with a mailbag, but I sorted it out. And then when you rang me back, I was on the phone trying to sort out a link for tonight.
Very popular man.
Okay.
Best-selling author.
I was just trying to blag someone to take me over because they want a grand rather than cash off me.
Okay.
And I was like, nah. I was
here.
like, I ain't getting into them fucking games. I was like, no, I'll give you 10 of cash, and then that's it. Do you know what I mean? I don't have to worry about the stress.
All right.
So he's going to take me over at 7:30 tonight.
Okay, then that's brilliant. Let me know what happens, yeah?
Yeah, no, I will do. I'm going at 7:30, so are you going to have cash out for when I drop it off?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right, I'll double check I've got enough in my bank and that, and then I'll see you. If I'm going over at 7:30, I'll probably get you for like 8:15.
That's great. All right, then.
All right, see you then, mate.
See ya. Bye.
See you later. Bye.
Sorry about that. It's work.
That's right. So we've just done another edit. That's because he had a work call and he had to take it.
I've got to get rid of this phone, turn it down.
There you go. No, that's all fine. So, quick question, just to finish this one, finish this podcast off. So, how on earth did you get away when you deafen yourself? You got a hole in the ceiling. People come to you because it's like they're thinking it's a bomb.
Yeah.
And you're staggering and can't even walk straight. I mean,
what happened was, when they actually come running over, these people passing by, they had great concern for us. They thought we'd blown up in a car. So we're staggering out of the car because the noise has just done us. And my mate, I've looked over at my mate, my ears are ringing. I can't hear what people are saying. And I look at my mate Peter, and he's staggering, and he's holding onto the front of the car. And I've looked, and there's a big roof, and all the metal ripped on the top of the roof of the car. I'm thinking, Jesus. And they're going, are you okay? Call an ambulance. And I went, no, I'm all right. And with that, I looked around, I thought, I've got to get out of here. And don't forget, I was 15 years old and fit as a butcher's dog. So I legged it, and so did the other two. You know, they were chipped off. And lucky enough, George had the presence of mind to take the shotgun with him. So everyone was chasing George because he's got a shotgun in his hand. Now, when the hue and cry's got on, they're after him, and he managed to get away.
Right.
And got the shotgun clean away as well. But it taught me the value of really checking guns. And you have to be competent in order to carry a gun. And from then on, I have to say, and it was always my way, whenever I got a new gun off anybody or I got a gun off anybody, I would take it over to the common in the dead of night, tie it to a tree, tie a string around the trigger, step well back and pull the trigger, because you never know what gun you get, and they could blow up in your hand. One did in my cousin's hand and nearly blew his finger off. So I was always really careful and really respectful of guns after that. I was never cavalier with guns after that because I knew the damage they could cause.
So, okay, so you know about the damage they can cause, and you know that firsthand as well.
Yeah.
So if you were going back, looking back yourself, or if there was a youngster and they had an opportunity, and let's just say they were in crime, you know, currently, or stepping into it, and they had the opportunity to get a hold of a gun, what advice would you give them right now?
My advice would be, and I mean, I know it sounds obvious, but it's true, do not do it, mate. I mean, when I do these talks in schools and universities and stuff, what I try and convey to people is...
I think that really sets the scene, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's my alarm saying, you know, we can't go over too much longer. Go on.
But what I'm trying to convey to people is this. Look at how my life ended up through guns. You think crime is glamorous and going to prison is glamorous, George Clooney in Ocean's 11 and whatever. That glamour fades when you are lying in a punishment block cell with 12 years of your life left to serve, vomiting blood and with 2 broken ribs after you've been bashed up in prison by the screws, or you've ended up in a riot or something. It is not worth it. You lose your family, you lose everything. And I know that from experience. I had 3 children when I went to jail. When I come out, I only had 2. You know, the life you lose is never worth the candle. It is not worth doing. It really isn't. And if you're young and thinking of going into crime, you're thinking in the wrong way, mate. Seriously, reconsider.
That is a great place to stop. That is true. And listen, if you are in a situation of maybe stepping into crime, you may feel threatened, or you feel like you just need a bit of advice. You know, there's a lot of place out there that can offer you this advice, and if you want to be getting an opinion from Noel himself, then you can contact us. You can leave a comment just below. You know, you don't have to leave your name or anything like that. You can just leave a comment below. Make sure you subscribe and click the little bell so you are alerted to more content that we put out. And if you're listening on the podcast, you can get us at intheslammer@monkeynutuk.com. Like I said, you don't have to leave your name, but Noel can probably advise you on perhaps what a course of action or where you can go to get a bit of advice. So, Noel, thank you very much.
No problem.
Brilliant.
You've been listening to In the Slammer with Noel Razor Smith, hosted by Elliott Frisby, music by Andrew Stamp, produced by Chris Byland, recorded at MonkeyNut Audiobooks. For more information, visit the In the Slammer Facebook page or visit MonkeyNutUK.com. If you have a question or want to contact Noel Razor Smith, then please email intheslammer@monkeynutuk.com.